issue of abortion is much more religiously politicized today than it used to be. And I think there's been some example of some religious language used tonight. And why that concerns me is that I fear that if it is criminalized, we won't simply be going back to the problems that I was already talking about, the tragedies that were suffered by women before the 1970s, but that actually the situation will be much worse. I mean, if this is the level of the passion that we're talking about now, as just one example, it's much easier and cheaper to travel now than it used to be. Will it be illegal for women to travel to get abortion care in another state or country? How could you tell if a woman was pregnant? And this may sound silly, but today we make millions of workers pee in a cup to prove that they're drug-free enough to work at Walmart. So it's really not that hard for me to imagine that women will have to prove they're not pregnant if they want to cross a border, if this is the level of passion that we're talking about. If abortion care is criminalized and enforcement is lax, because maybe as it used to be not really that big a deal, just kind of a dirty secret, then we'll live in a country where rich women have access to abortion care and poor women don't, which is increasingly the way things are going anyway, as poor women have less access to all forms of health care and family planning. But under criminalization, of course, the situation would be much worse. And so poor women would be forced to have more children, which would either turn them into forced providers of babies for rich women who want to adopt, which I find ethically troubling. Or if the poor women keep their children, it'll drive them further into poverty, foreclosures, unemployment, and it'll almost certainly increase the number of infants and children who die because of neglect or because they're shaken and abused by desperate parents or similar causes. On the one hand, worldwide, it's been shown time and time again that the more control that women have to plan their families, the more prosperous and peaceful the country. On the other hand, the move to give embryos and fertilized eggs now legal rights is also seeking to outlaw the most effective, safe, and widely used forms of contraception, the pill, the injection, the IUD, and I hope that you'll talk about birth control that you support, because these forms allow for the possibility that eggs will be fertilized but never implant. And ironically, because most abortions actually happen spontaneously for a variety of natural reasons, doing away with major forms of birth control will vastly increase unwanted pregnancy, and therefore natural abortion and miscarriage will increase, as well as human-induced illegal abortions, because as we've seen throughout history, women who don't want to be pregnant will find a way to end those pregnancies. Making embryos sacred would also make artificial insemination practically impossible, which would mean forcing women who don't want to have children to have them, while denying women who desperately do want natural children the chance to have them. And this I find not only grossly unfair, but I also wonder what will be the likely result for those children who are born to the women who don't want them, as opposed to the women who do want them. And to be fair, I believe that most people who support so-called personhood for fertilized eggs and embryos, they don't want these things. I don't think they've considered all the implications of that point of view with due respect. I think that the idea of abortion is very disturbing and people don't like it and they don't want it to happen, and that is understandable. Nobody likes abortion. But if we want fewer abortions, the least helpful thing that we can do is criminalize them. The most helpful things that we can do are to support comprehensive sex education and birth control access. And the most ironic thing I saw in that video was where it said no one seemed to care, because the people who are doing the most to help lessen numbers of unwanted pregnancies and therefore the numbers of abortions are actually clinics like Planned Parenthood. That's the vast majority of what they do. I used to go there all the time for birth control. So closing the clinics, which is part of what the 40 Days of Prayer I think is about, actually I think is increasing the number of unwanted pregnancies and abortions.
You're fine.
5 minutes.
Thanks. Her last point is Planned Parenthood clinics are closing
by them closing, would increase abortions. In fact, we see a lot of Planned Parenthood and other abortion clinics closing, and abortions are decreasing. And I get from Bernard Nathanson. He is the founder of NARAL, the largest abortion, basically the largest abortion organization in the entire world, NARAL. He tells us, now he's been responsible for 75,000 abortions. And his own documentation, he says that they falsified documents, and they would tell, back in the 1970s, they would tell the media that there was 1 million abortions happening illegally every single year. And in his own quotes, he said that it was more like 100,000. And in fact, she said that the same rate as they are now as they were before. And so if he's true that it's 100,000, then even his lie at 1 million is wrong, because we're at 1.3 million children every single year. Again, we're trying to talk about legality. Well, it doesn't really matter if it's legal or not. It has to become unthinkable. The rate of death has dropped. I don't necessarily buy that. She also mentioned the fact that we don't want our relatives to be brain dead. And the fact that they'd be brain dead, okay, I'm going to be in the hospital somewhere, does that make them any less human? Does that make them have any less value because they may be brain dead? I would say no. Because quite honestly, a lot of people come out of comas. What about that person who's having surgery and they're under anesthesia? They're acting just as if they were, in fact, less than a fetus or an embryo, less than an unborn child. But we still value them. We're doing surgery on them, right? And we know, she says here, 24 weeks is pain. Now, I think we know from Bernard Nathanson with his movie The Silent Scream, which is actually an ultrasound video of an abortion, on a very early abortion, that once you probe the child, they move around like crazy. They get out of the way. And we also know from Abby Johnson, a former Planned Parenthood director, that she witnessed an ultrasound in front of her of an abortion, an early abortion, where when they probed the child, it moved out of the way. It just kept fighting to get out of the way. And so this idea that they don't feel pain just kind of ignores the fact that they have human value. Just like you and me. We all have value. And again, also women. Women have value, and I guess that takes me to it hurts women. I stand out there on the clinic. Anyone who goes out to the abortion clinic, they can see this firsthand. That around 12:30, there are women who try it out, and actually they're in the passenger seat. Every one of them is crying. Every one of them has their head down. They are depressed. They are overwhelmed with the sense that they had done something wrong. And so if you go, I encourage you, if you're going to be part of the abortion debate, I encourage you to go to the abortion clinic where they're happening. Because then at that moment, you can see where it hurts women. And there are thousands of women with the Silent No More awareness campaign who come out and they say, it hurt me. I regret my abortion. And women, they continue to go back over and over, being pain. And she says here that it increases abusive relationships. In fact, abortion covers up abusive relationships. And may I share Maria?
Yes.
Maria, who had an abortion when she was very young, was dating a married man. And this married man asked her to cover up their relationship so that he would not have to tell his wife.
30 seconds.
So the idea that somehow abortion helps these women is horrible. I met with a man, Jesse, who desperately wanted a child, but his girlfriend didn't. And so he calls me on Saturday morning. I said, I can't do this. I don't know. Men are shoved to the sidelines. They don't matter. They're humans. They're rights. They have value, right?
Time. Finish what you're saying.
That'll be fine.
Okay. 5 minutes.
many families who have to decide whether or not to stop life support on a relative who's brain dead. So I just want to point out that coma and brain dead are very different things. And I've also, as a pastoral counselor, counseled women post-abortion. And abortion is not easy. It's never an easy decision. It's never an easy process. And there are women who regret it. There are a lot of women who don't regret it, who are relieved. There are a lot of women who go back and forth. There are a lot of women who feel both. They regret it and they're relieved. A lot of the women that I talk to are not so much afraid that they did something wrong as afraid that God will punish them. I recently spoke to a woman who was afraid that God would punish her by not allowing her to have a child when she was ready. And I told her, well, most women who have abortions do go ahead and have children. I mean, they're able to do that. So I don't know what God thinks, but that seemed to bring her some comfort. Ethics is a difficult business. It's much more difficult than absolutism or supernaturally aided religion because ethics deals with all the messiness of reality. It sounds really nice to talk about ending abortion. The world would be a better place if women were never in the position of needing abortion care, if all pregnancies were planned and wanted and nothing ever changed in a woman's life during pregnancy, if all pregnant women were healthy in mind and body during their entire pregnancy and had loving, positive support emotionally and practically for the entire pregnancy, if nothing ever went wrong during a pregnancy and if all fetuses were healthy, if there was support for families who wanted to try raising severely handicapped children, and so on and so on. If we lived in that perfect world, then talking about ending abortion would make moral sense. But we live in the real world, and it has a lot of challenges. And so talking about ending abortion is a religious ideal, and it's beautiful in its way, but it's not an ethical plan for our country, because what ending abortion really means is criminalizing something that is and will continue to be desperately needed. And therefore, ending abortion really means beginning a nightmare of criminalization for doctors and women and friends and families who want to support and help them. And again, I am talking about women because I know that women are real and full and live and conscious and feel pain. Just about the pain thing. Visuals are very powerful. And it's possible that fetuses before 24 weeks have reflexes. But I have to go with what neurobiologists say about what pain is and what consciousness is and what it takes in brain development. And what they say is that, until at least 24, 25 weeks, there's just not enough brain in a developing fetus to have any pain sensations. I'm sorry, I don't know that guy that you quoted.
Bernard Nathanson?
Yeah, I don't know Bernard Nathanson and his story. All I can say is that I consider a number of sources, and you can go out and do your own research, and I hope that you will, because anytime that we're talking about numbers or anytime that we're talking about anything that has any objective aspect to it, people I think should educate themselves and come to their own conclusions and discover their own facts. I think that's it.